Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so today my talk is going to be talking about the unseen metric. So measuring when AI mentions you or when it doesn't. But first thing first, right? Why do we call it the unseen metric? The unseen metric because these are the kind of things that you can't see it from your existing dashboard. You can't see it from your Google Analytics. And unseen because you kind of feel like the AI is eating some of your lunches, but you just don't know how and how it happened, where it happens, and all that. That's why I call it unseen in a way. All right? So, okay, first thing first, right? I'm sure everyone has been using ChatGPT, definitely. And I just want to know, right? Anyone actually ask ChatGPT about the tools, about whatever that you are offering, and whether ChatGPT mentioned you or not? Anyone was checking this like earlier? All right. Okay. So most of you are not checking. Okay. And did you see your brand being mentioned or not? For those that are tracking? No. Okay. So that's not good. All right. And but that is just probably one prompt or one question that you're asking, right? So we know for a fact that your potential customers might be asking a whole lot more questions. So how do you know whether you are mentioned or not? Maybe these questions you are not mentioned. Maybe a few other questions you were actually mentioned. All right. So that's the unseen metric that we are going to be talking about today. Okay, so first of all, my name is April. I'm the lead SEO AO strategist at Growth Pro. I'm also the co-founder of Ziki.com. And just like most of you here, all right, I also spent a lot of years chasing ranking, impression, traffic for my own site, for my client's website, all right. And of course, I believe most of us here as well, we have celebrated hitting ranking #1 on Google, which was like very, very important during that time, right? So when ChatGPT came about and we know that, okay, AI search is coming, that has become a pretty big issue for us as well. Okay, so that's also the reason why we are starting to look into, okay, what is this about and how can we take this opportunity and use this for our own client, for our own website. Okay, so yes, we've been chasing all these things, but then things are starting to change quietly because we did not realize at first that ChatGPT is going to be the place people go and ask questions. We thought it was just something that you're using to improve your email, all right, ask it to give you some jokes. But we never thought that people are going there asking for recommendation. We thought recommendation usually they go and ask your friend, Google, but now things have changed, and they have changed very, very quietly. Okay, so we know that your customers are moving into answers and summaries. Okay, but the sad truth is that most of our tools are still tracking clicks, traffic, and visits, right? Which is no longer that accurate. Maybe still accurate for now, but may no longer be accurate soon. Okay, and that's also because why? Because nobody actually go and change the KPI. Your dashboard is still showing you some old KPIs that may no longer be good enough. Okay, so in the new AI search era, right, we should be measuring whether AI recommends us or not. Because otherwise, what else are you going to be measuring? Okay? But before I go into that, I'm still hearing some chatter in the industry, maybe from agencies, from website owners, saying SEO is not dead yet. Okay, there's still a lot of debate around this area, right? SEO, is it dead? Is it not dead? Is it AEO now? And so on, right? So I want to break a little bit of the old belief barrier before we proceed. Because people are saying that, hey, if I look at my Google Analytics right now, your organic traffic is probably still your biggest driver of traffic. Potentially even your biggest driver of conversions for now, right? So if you look at this chart here, Google search is still commanding about 81.6% of the overall online search, which is still huge. No matter how much we talk about ChatGPT being where people go and get their answers right now, it's just 9%. Okay? So comparatively, this is still pretty small. However, Google is changing. I'm sure many of you have realized. The first change is your AI overview. Okay? AI overview is already taking about 30% clicks away from your normal Google search. Yes, 81% still go to Google, but now you are left with 70% of the clicks. And that is just AI overview. What if they change to AI mode? Anyone have used AI mode before? Yes, right? So AI mode is just like ChatGPT, okay? But a little bit better because you still see some links over there. No longer your 10 blue links, but you still have 3 links, okay? So it's not as bad as ChatGPT, but this is definitely changing. And right now, we are still seeing the normal search, but what if tomorrow Google changes to AI mode? So if Google changes to AI mode, just now the 81.6% of all the Google search now becomes your answer summaries as well. So now your 10 blue links no longer there. So if you're saying, oh, SEO is not dead yet, my traffic is still coming mostly from Google search, when that shift happens to AI mode, you will probably see your traffic tank. So that's how important this is going to be. Okay? And we know for a fact that Google is not just testing AI search, right? They are definitely going to be replacing search with their AI mode. So we need to be prepared for that. Oops. Otherwise, it's going to be like your funnel, suddenly you have a whole punch to it because now all the traffic will be gone because we are talking about zero-click era right now. Okay? And when the shift happens and move to AI mode, that hole is going to get bigger. So then this quote here is quite important, right? And I'm sure many of us here has been doing a lot of measurement. You look at your Google Analytics and whatnot. So we know for a fact that what gets measured gets improved. But the most important question right now we should ask ourselves is, are you still measuring the right metric or not? Okay, so that's, again, something that I want to be sharing with everyone here today. So in the old era of clicks, our KPIs are built around these few things, right? Ranking, organic traffic, we are looking at your bounce rate, you are looking at your session duration. This is also your way of measuring the quality of the traffic. However, these KPI are no longer that valid because right now, if you look at the traffic that is coming from AI, this is no longer a right way of measuring the quality. Okay, so that's why we call this vanity noise. Okay, so in the new era of AI search, you should be measuring something that is totally different. Why? Because, like I said, all these are vanity noise. So let's look at why we call this as vanity noise. Why the previous metrics that you are tracking is no longer valid. Because first thing, we are tracking what? Ranking, keyword ranking. If I'm ranking number 1, if you look at right now, just with AI overview, even though you're ranking number 1, you are actually considered on page 2. Because why? You need to scroll a few times before you even see number 1. So what's the point of ranking number 1 right now if you are not being seen above the fold, right? So that's why we call the ranking number 1 right now is your new page 2, your ghost town. Nobody goes there anymore, right? And if you are measuring organic traffic, so same thing, right? All your audience are getting the answers. They don't need to visit your website. When that happens, your measuring of the traffic is not going to be accurate anymore, right? So if you look at this chart here, right, in 2024, for most Americans, right, only 41.5%, after they do a search, only 41.5% actually clicked a link. And out of those links, only 70% is clicking to organic, right? The other 20+% is your paid ads. Which means in the zero-click searches, right, every 1,000 Google search, 360 clicks went to organic results. That's all. Less than 40%. Okay? So if you are still measuring organic traffic, then you are measuring something that is no longer accurate. And now, if you look at engagement metrics, I mentioned earlier, right, your bounce rate, your average session, and all that. If you look at AI users in general, right, they visit viewer pages. They are spending shorter time on the website. They have a much higher bounce rate, but their conversion is the highest. Why? Because they are sold pre-click. They are already convinced that you are the right person, you are the right tools, before they even click to your website. And now that when they are on the website, they don't have to look around. They just go in, click the book button, click the contact us button, and be done with it, right? That's why they visit viewer pages. They don't need to spend so much time on the website, and they have a much higher bounce rate. But if you are still looking at this data right now, you will notice that, hey, ChatGPT traffic is actually pretty bad. Very fast, very short time span, very high bounce rate, low quality. But that's not the truth. All right, that's why if you're still looking at these metrics, you are looking at the wrong picture. Okay, so, and also incorrect traffic attribution, this is also quite important because if you look at the user journey here, step number one, okay, they ask ChatGPT what is the best CRM. Then ChatGPT may answer, okay, HubSpot is great. And some of you may have noticed when you ask something out of ChatGPT, sometimes they will have a link, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they will just mention the brand and that's about it. Okay? So if let's say they only mention the brand, what the user will do next is that they will go to Google, search for the brand. Or maybe they will just type in the URL directly, like in this case, HubSpot.com. And now your Google Analytics will register this as what? Direct traffic. Okay? And that is wrong. Suddenly you see your organic traffic tank, your direct traffic goes up. What does it mean? Right? So that is no longer the right way of attributing the traffic. So in this case, right, I noticed this is one of our clients' website. So their organic traffic comparing 2024 to 2025 jumped by 437%. Does it mean that their organic is not doing so well? Probably not. It's just that AI is recommending them, and now they're getting more traffic coming directly. All right? So again, this goes back to the idea. Your traditional KPIs no longer describe the current reality that we are in right now. Okay? So decision happens, like I said, before the click. So you cannot measure whatever that the user is doing after the click. And a lot of your potential competitors, they are already moving towards this. All right? They are potentially the early movers. They are already doing this. So they are not waiting for their Google Analytics to catch up, to show them where they are ranking on AI search. Okay? So you shouldn't be waiting as well. So now, I've talked about this, right? All these metrics are no longer valid and so on. But if that's the case, right, what should we be measuring right now? Okay, so we should be measuring the unseen metric, which I'm going to be sharing about today. And most importantly is, are you mentioned, not just mentioned, but are you mentioned favorably or not by AI? So the first thing that you definitely need to measure is visibility and inclusion. So this means whether your brand or your website is being mentioned or included in the answers by all these different AI engines or not. So first thing we look at is your brand coverage. So is your brand mentioned in the output of all these AI platform? That will give you your coverage. Let's say if you have a 20% coverage, it means you are mentioned 20% of the time. Okay? And website citation. Citation, the difference between your brand mention and your citation is the fact that brand mention is just mentioning your brand. It may not link to you. Citation is when they link to you. And the reason why they link to you is because they are using your content as a source. So that's where the citations come in play. So these are the two main things that you want to be tracking and measuring because you want to know whether the AI recommends you or not. And you also want to see whether the AI use your content as a source of answers. Because if they use your content as a source of answers, it means now you control the narrative, not your competitors. All right? After that, you need to track your share of voice. So share of voice is very similar to brand coverage earlier. But share of voice is basically telling you, out of all these different questions that people are asking, okay, so how many times I am included in there? So I think Alvin and Peter has already mentioned a lot about this. So I'm not going to be talking too much about share of voice. But position and answer, this is your new ranking. So if let's say you are mentioned as the third option versus if you are mentioned as the first option, that also plays a huge difference. That's why you want to be tracking, I am being mentioned, great, but am I being mentioned top or at the bottom? All right? So that's visibility and inclusion. That's the first thing that you need to measure. Then next, you want to measure the influence and trust. So are you shaping the narrative that the AI is using or not? So what do we mean by that? First thing is you need to know what's the sentiment. So you need to measure your sentiment analysis. So does the AI portray you as a top choice, a risky option? Maybe they are portraying you using a very specific way that you may not want to associate your brand with. So say positive is when they say you are a reliable choice. Neutral is when they say, oh, you offer this, that's it. Nothing. No positive, no negative. But if they mention, oh, brand X is okay, but they have issues with their customer support, that's negative. All right? And you definitely do not want that. So if you are measuring just the brand mention or the citation, all you get back is that, oh, AI mentioned me, that's great. But does it mean that it is mentioning you because you have issues? Or is it because you are a reliable choice? That's why you need the sentiment analysis as well. Then brand positioning. So is the AI saying that I am a reliable or an expensive or an industry leader? So that's the kind of adjective or the keyword that the AI is using to describe your brand. So you want to be tracking all these things as well, because now you know, okay, this is the positioning that the AI is giving me. But is that the right positioning that I want my brand to be in or not? Because if it's not, then you need to change the narrative. But but you can only change it if you are aware of it. Okay? So for example, right, if they say that you are expensive, where is this data coming from? Go and look for the source and then try to change that. Or maybe come up with more content that negate this, for example, right? But you need to know first that this is how AI sees your brand. Okay? And since AI right now is the one that people goes to, so if you look at the old flow and the new flow, right? Google do the search, they go to Google to do the search, they click the website, then they discover your brand. Now is they ask the generic questions, AI suggests a brand, then they will go and search for your brand on Google. That's why I said earlier, right? Your brand search might spike up when people are starting to search for your brand because they see the recommendation. So you also want to be measuring your brand search. And this one is easier. You can just use your Google Search Console and you'll be able to get this data. Okay? So once the AI suggests your brand, you should start to see your brand search spiking up. Okay? So that's something that you want to be measuring because that would give you an idea into whether AI is currently recommending your brand or not. And the third thing, so we've talked about inclusion, we talked about the influence, which is the sentiment. And the third one, of course, as always, this is the most important KPI, right? Your conversions. But in the post-AI era, okay, we have two different types of conversion that we need to measure. The first one is our post-AI click conversion with a direct link. So this is what happens if the AI cite your website and they include a link. Because when they include a link, usually the link will contain this UTM source with chatgpt.com, Perplexity. So if you go to your Google Analytics right now, you should be able to see this traffic coming in. So these are traffic that is directly referred to you from all this AI search. And this is easy, right? You can easily track this. When they come in from ChatGPT, what are they doing? Okay, are they converting? Are they browsing? And so on. But I mentioned earlier, if let's say ChatGPT just mention your brand without a link, that's when it gets trickier. All right, this is what we call post-AI exposure conversion because there's no click. We can only inference this. Okay, so if there is no link, so you need to track these kind of things. You need to track the lifts in brand and citation coverage. Okay, you need to track your brand search and click. You need to track your increase in direct traffic, and then use this to then track the conversion. If let's say I receive more direct traffic, I see that my brand search is higher, okay, then do I see an increase in my conversion? If yes, then it's kind of because of AI mentioning my brand. Even though I don't have a direct link, but I can safely inference that, or I can make that correlation. So this is your post-AI exposure conversion, which you cannot track directly like the first one. Okay, so this is just a simple chart to show. I mentioned three things earlier. Visibility and inclusion. This is where you do your brand coverage, your website citations tracking and whatnot. Then you need to track the influence, whether the AI is citing you or mentioning you favorably or not. Then you try to use all this data to correlate back into your conversion. Am I seeing a lift in my conversion because of all these things? If let's say my brand coverage increases, okay, then I see an uptick from my conversion in direct traffic, then I know potentially there's a correlation there. Okay? So now we've talked about all these things that we want to be tracking, but how do you actually track all these things? Because like I said, your Google Analytics are not giving you a lot of all this information. So how do you track this information, and how do you also turn it into action? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to just be tracking. I cannot be telling my boss, hey, this is what's happening with ChatGPT tracking. But then he will ask you like, what's next? What should we do, right? So we have to turn that into action as well. But before that, let's talk about how do we track all these things. So there are two things One is you can use your existing tools to track some of these metrics that may still be useful, but they are no longer useful as a standalone. So you need to couple it with another tool. But let's talk about the existing tracking tools, which is to track your site traffic and search behavior demand. So of course, first thing is you have your Google Analytics, you have your Microsoft Clarity, okay? So these are able to track post-click. Once they click into your website, this is what you can track. So I mentioned earlier, you should already have all this data in your Google Analytics right now. All you need to do is just create a channel grouping. These are all the different source and medium that you can use. All right, that will give you an idea into how much traffic you are currently getting from all this AI platform and what they are doing, whether they convert or not, whether they spend more time or whether they are visiting your pricing page and so on. So this is what you can use with Google Analytics right now. And then your Search Console or even Google Trends. But the main thing we want to be tracking here is your brand name. Because like I said, if the AI is mentioning you, then your brand name should go up. So you want to know whether is it true or not. So you want to be tracking all the different brand name and variations of your brand name. Like in the case of our Growth Pro, we have the door, we don't have the door, we have the space. So all these are potentially ways that your users are searching for you. Okay, so on your Google Search Console, create a filter, put in all these brand name variations to it. Now you can track whether your brand name search is going up or going down. You can do the same with Google Trend, because Google Trend will also be able to show you your search demand, all right, whether it's going up or going down. So these are the two different tools that is still okay to use to get some of this information. But you need a new tool to track the rest of the metrics that I mentioned earlier. So the new tracking tools would allow you to track your AI visibility and also the sentiment of it. So for example, this is one tool that we are using. So you have your AI citation report, okay, and you can track the number of prompts. Okay, one thing very important to note is this. Now that we are in the era of AI, we no longer have data like your Search Console. You do not know how many people are searching for specific questions, okay? Whoever that is telling you that they have those data is bullshit. Nobody has this data. ChatGPT does not give us this data. So what we can do right now is we are not trying to see how many people are searching for these questions. We are just trying to see, am I included in that question? That's it. All right? If I'm included, okay, good enough for now, until we have more data points to get all this information. Okay? So you need to have a tool that tracks your brand coverage, your share of voice, your website citations, and of course you want to be tracking the trend. Because once you track the trend, that's when you know whether your work, your execution, is it working for you or not? Is the trend moving up or moving down? Or is not moving at all? Okay, so you need to track so that you know whether your task is, your execution is correct or incorrect. So this would be the tool that ties everything together. Because now that you have all these data, you have your data from Google Analytics, you have your data for Search Console, and now you have all this AI visibility and sentiment tool, which you can just use whatever tool that is out there right now, okay? And they will allow you to track all these things. But in order for you to track this properly, you need to first ask yourself this. What question are your customers asking? Because like I said, you cannot know what question they are asking, but you can guess based on your customer support ticket, for example. Or maybe you can use Ahrefs data or your Google Search Console data to see what kind of questions people are asking. Then you can start tracking those to see, now that I'm winning for these questions on Google, if let's say people are asking these same questions on ChatGPT or Perplexity, am I still being cited or being mentioned or not? Okay, once you set up all these questions that you want to be tracking, then the tool would run and help you to track across all the different LLMs that is out there. Okay? So now let's talk about this three-part AI tracking framework using these existing tools and the new tools. How can we get value out of this? Okay, so 3 steps. One is you need to diagnose. Diagnose meaning you need to first use this tool to track where you are right now. That would be your baseline. Then you need to execute. After you execute, you need to measure. Is this working for me or not? So let's go into this one by one. So first, diagnose. Are you visible right now? So like I said earlier, you need to determine the kind of questions that you want to be tracking. Okay, like best X for Y, alternatives, tool for the problem that you are trying to solve. And then you want to see, if the people are asking this kind of very generic questions, is my brand being mentioned or not? Okay, so you need to track these AI responses across all the different platforms that you think your users are using. ChatGPT will be the top. Then you have your Gemini, Perplexity, and soon you will have your Google AI mode as well. Okay, then you want to know whether your brand is being mentioned, is it being cited, or how is the AI positioning your brand? That's your sentiment that I mentioned earlier. So say, for example, we have three prompts here. If I track across all the different LLMs, so I know for a fact that I am being mentioned in all of them. I know where am I ranking. I'm ranking position number 3, number 5. What is my share of voice? How many times your brand are being mentioned? And what is the total brand that are being mentioned? Total brands meaning including your competitor's brand. So you want to know not just whether your brand is being mentioned, you also want to know which competitors are being mentioned. Okay? So now, after you've diagnosed and set that baseline, so that is your starting point. Now that you have the starting point, the next step for you is to start to execute. Okay? So you need to look for opportunities to improve your website performance using your AEO strategies, which I think Alvin has shared a lot already earlier, so I'm not going to be going into that. But what you are trying to do here is you are trying to influence the AI so that they will favor your brand and your content more. Okay, so that's where all these opportunities come, because you need to know, okay, now that I have this baseline, these are all my current existing content, my site and all that. So what should I be doing? All right, sometimes when you have a tool that just tells you, hey, this is what's happening. You have your baseline, you have your measurement, but what's next? What should I do about it? All right, that's why having all these opportunities is very important so that you know what to execute, which one is the low-hanging fruit, which one is your quick wins, and which one you can do it but for a longer term growth. And of course, after you do your execution, your next step is to measure it. Okay, so you want to measure if there's any uplift in the inclusion. Let's say I was tracking 50 different questions, and maybe I'm not mentioning any of them. Okay, now I've done all these different execution, following the opportunities, following the proper AEO strategies and whatnot. Now I want to track again and see, am I seeing any uplift in my inclusion or not? Okay, and am I seeing any improvement in the sentiment? If let's say you notice that your sentiment is actually not that good, so have you done enough to influence the sentiment? And of course, most importantly is, are those things helping to increase your conversion overall? So now, this is where the correlation comes into play. I have my visibility data, I have my Search Console data, I have my Google Analytics data. How do I make sense of all these data combined together? That's where you need to do correlation. Because like I said, there's no direct link. You can only inference and correlate. So in this case, right, I noticed that my mentions are improving on a monthly basis. So I'm getting more and more prompts where I am included in the answers. That's great. And at the same time, I realized that my Google brand search is actually moving up. So it means that, yes, this mention, inclusion in the AI answer is actually increasing my brand search, and people are searching more often. And now I can correlate that back and say, okay, the correlation is about 0.82%, which is considered pretty high. All right? This is our only way of measuring the ROI right now, because we are still kind of blind right now. Okay, so if your boss asks you, okay, whatever that you guys are doing, what is the ROI of it? How do you prove the ROI? This is one way of doing it. But the most important thing is, everything must be action. So it's not just observation. That's why we do not want to just have a tool that tells us, okay, this is what's going on. We want a tool that can tell us what you need to do, okay? And after you've done it, how is that impacted your performance overall? So tools that only shows you graph is actually not good enough. You need more than that, especially right now, because AEO is changing very fast. GPT-5, then GPT-5.1 in a matter of months. That's pretty fast, right? And you may be cited and mentioned in GPT-5, but may not be cited or mentioned in 5.1, for example. So that's why we need to take action, and we need to be able to measure the impact of those things. So just a quick one, diagnose. So you need to set up your baseline, then you need to execute. After that, you need to measure to see if there's a positive correlation to it or not. So, but okay, this is still going to be our challenge right now. Even though you have all these tools, with you right now, it will still be a challenge to prove ROI. So if your boss comes to you, okay, now I invest in this tool, I do all these things, how do you prove that there is a positive ROI to this? So this is a challenge, and this is something that we may not be able to answer right now until we have more data directly from ChatGPT and all that. But like I said, the correlation is one very good way for us to do this right now. Okay, so important. We always, when it comes to marketing, right, we always say that we go to where our customers are. All right. So if AI is how people are getting their answers right now, then AI answer is where we need to go and where we need to measure. There's no way around it. So stop measuring pages people used to click because it's no longer valid. You need to start measuring whether AI actually mentioned you or not, and whether AI mentioned you favorably or not. Okay, so if let's say you have one thing that you want to be doing after this event today, that's what I want you to try. So start tracking one question your customers are going to be asking AI and start to see whether you are in there or not. If it's not, then that should be your number one KPI moving forward until you get that. All right, so that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, April. I'm going to get you to remain here, and we're going to answer some questions here right now, right? So we're going to pull up the questions again. And as we're doing that, I have one question for you, right? Now, we know that AI answers has changed a lot of things, but do you see in your experience working with your clients across different industries, do you see AI answers and also for the whole AI search differently in different industries, like finance, e-commerce versus FMCG, for example? Is there any differences between industries which are more impacted by that?
I think the impact is basically still quite across the board, but I would say that maybe B2B is not so much. All right, maybe more consumer-facing one will see the biggest impact, mainly because consumer they change very fast. Right, they will use ChatGPT, they will search for it. But for B2B, right, maybe they still don't trust it that much, right? And they are usually B2B, their process of conversion, the process of actually deciding is much longer. So it's not something that you see them going to ChatGPT, get the answer, present it to their boss, and be done with it, right? So I think the B2B one might be less impacted for now, all right? But when AI mode comes into play, then yeah, gone already.
All right, okay. So this one is interesting. What's a regular time frame for AEO starting to take off? It depends, which is what a lot of people will say, right? What would it depend on?
Yeah, so the answer is it depends. Okay, but okay, first thing is I think you need to understand there are two ways that ChatGPT, for example, will be using your data. The first way is using it as training data. The second way is using it as they answers your questions. So when you're asking ChatGPT a question, for example, right? So you notice that sometimes it will do a web search. It will tell you that, oh, I'm doing a web search. Sometimes it doesn't do that. Why? Because if there is a question that they can answer you without doing a web search, it will probably come from their training data. So they will just use their training data to answer you. And we know for a fact that all these LLM, their training data is pretty backward. Not to say backward, but it's a bit late, right? Maybe it was a few months old. Sometimes it was 1 year old. Like, okay, I'm only trained up to January 2025, for example. So it means that any article or content that you created after January is not part of the training data. So, but when you ask something that are a little bit more recent, let's say, for example, I want to know what is the weather in KL today, for example, then it needs to go out there and get the information. That's where it will do a web search. So for you, right, let's say when you are deciding, okay, what content I want to be creating, you can try to use that questions that you think is relevant to the question, the content that you want to create. Go and ask ChatGPT and see whether it does a web search or not. If it doesn't do a web search, you know, okay, this content, if I create now, it'll probably take a few months before you get mentioned. But if it goes out there and do a web search, then your chance is much faster, potentially just 1-2 weeks. Okay, so if you want quick wins, create content that ChatGPT goes out there and do a web search. That would be the fastest way. All right.
Okay, I see this question coming up a lot today. What kind of prompts do we want to optimize for, right? So if is answerthepublic.com useful to know what potential customers normally are asking? If not, what tools do you recommend to discover what people are really asking?
Okay. So the thing is this, right? We know for a fact that the user are changing the way they search, but the question that they ask will remain the same. All right, they are going to be asking the same questions. Maybe they ask in a much more a different way. Maybe they put in a little bit more context, a little bit more requirements to it. But generally, it will be probably the same. That's why I would say answer the public. Maybe your SEO data may still play a role, but you cannot just take it as it is. Okay, maybe use that and expand it further to find questions that are a little bit more unique, a little bit more relevant to your business. Yeah, so that's how you come up with the right prompt for your company.
Any tools that we can use beyond answer the public?
Answer the public, I think Ahrefs, and of course our own tool, Ziki.com, will soon have a prompt research which uses the same data but use that data to expand it further so that you get a much better prompt that is more tailored to your brand profile.
Okay, let's go for one more question here. And this is something that I see also being asked a lot, right? So what is one tip or method to get AI to mention you? And I think a lot of speakers today has mentioned using answers, putting answers on your site and creating FAQs on your site. Is that the best way, or what's one tip you can share, like best tip?
Okay, there's definitely one way, because at the end of the day, right, whether it's Google, whether it's AI, what they get answers from are from content. So your content will still play the biggest role. Okay, so you want to make sure that your content is written in a way that is easy for AI to extract. I think Alvin mentioned about how do you chunk it and so on, right? So that's the best way. You don't want your answers to be 3,000 words long. Okay, you want it to be short, and you want it to be structured in a question and answers method. So for example, right, let's say when I create an article, right, my article will have multiple sections. Every single section should be one question. And then the first few sentences should be the answers to that questions. That's the best way of doing it.
Any recommended length of answers? 2 sentences?
60 to 80 words, yeah. It's
All
not
right.
a hard rule, but that's generally the guidance.
Fundamentals.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. April, please give a round of applause to him. April,
Thank you so much.
thanks for your time. All right.